Welcome to Chat Like a Native.
Hi there.
So today we're going to dig into something that, well, it trips up a lot of English learners. And honestly, native speakers too. Those little words, the sounds that just sneak in,
Filler words, yeah.
Exactly, filler words. And maybe you felt like, I don't know, they make you sound a bit less sure of yourself, or they kind of interrupt your flow.
Sure, that's a common feeling.
Well, this deep dive is definitely for you then. We're going to unpack what they are, really get into why we use them, and most importantly, look at some simple, effective ways you can maybe cut down on them.
Right. The goal is to help you sound more fluent, feel more confident, and just make sure your message really, really lands.
Yeah, get your point across clearly. So hopefully you'll get some practical tips you can use, like right away.
Absolutely. We've looked at quite a bit for this, some language research, practical communication stuff, even a bit of the psychology behind it all, to really understand these, super common little words. And our mission here isn't just to say, oh, fillers are bad.
No, definitely not.
It's more about exploring why they pop up, how they kind of subtly change how we communicate, and then giving you those concrete strategies to manage them. So your message comes through with more impact and clarity.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. What exactly are these things? I mean, besides the obvious, sounds like which feel like just pure pauses almost. There's actually a whole range, isn't there?
That's totally right. Yeah, linguists often group these under the term disfluencies. Now, those are usually called filled pauses.
Filled pauses. Okay.
Yeah, basically sounds we make while our brain is catching up or, searching for the next word. It's a processing thing.
Right.
But then you have actual words and phrases like, these kind of work differently.
Okay, so they're not just buying time. They do something else.
Exactly. Well, they can fill space, sure, but they often have a social job or they help structure the conversation.
Huh. Like what?
Well, think about, sometimes it signals you're maybe paraphrasing or giving an estimate.
Oh, right. It was 5 minutes long.
Precisely. Or,
Right.
that can be a way to check if the listener's following or to kind of hint at shared knowledge between you. And words like so or well, they often signal a shift, like you're moving to a new point or starting your answer. They're part of the flow of conversation.
That's really interesting. So, for instance, isn't always just a nervous heretic. It might actually be, doing a bit more work in how we interact.
Exactly. It can be quite complex, actually, which kind of leads us to the big question, right? If they can sometimes clutter up what we're saying, why on earth are they so common, so incredibly frequent?
Yeah, it really feels like everyone uses them,
Yeah.
Is it just something humans do when they talk off the cuff?
Research points to a few key reasons. The biggest one is probably that processing time we mentioned. Our brains are fast, but pulling up the exact right word, building a complex sentence, especially when you're talking spontaneously or feel a bit pressured, it takes milliseconds.
Sure.
So fillers act like these little placeholders. They kind of signal to the listener, hang on, I'm still talking, just thinking.
Yeah.
And that stops maybe an awkward silence or someone jumping in too soon.
Okay. So it's like your brain telling your mouth, just hold on a sec, or the other way around.
Yeah, you could think of it like buffering on a video, maybe. The information's coming. It just needs that tiny moment to load.
Got it.
Another really big factor, which you kind of touched on with is, social comfort and even politeness.
How so?
Using these little words can sometimes soften a request or make a statement sound less blunt, or even just signal that you're listening attentively, nodding and saying, They help smooth over the edges in casual chat.
Huh. So they're not just about me needing thinking time. They can also be about managing the vibe with the other person.
Absolutely. They can help avoid silences that some people find really uncomfortable. They can signal you're pausing, but plan to continue. And of course, there's just plain old habit.
Right, habit.
We naturally pick up speech patterns from people around us, friends, family, colleagues, even stuff we watch or listen to. And over time, these just get baked in. They become almost automatic.
What about nerves
Yeah.
or stress? I feel like when I get nervous, my rate just goes through the roof.
Oh, definitely. That's a major point in a lot of the communication studies. Being anxious or nervous really does affect the cognitive parts of speech.
Wow.
Well, when you're stressed, your working memory gets overloaded, finding words can be slower, and you feel this intense pressure to sound fluent, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that pressure makes you more likely to fall back on these easy automatic responses like chucking in a filler while your brain is scrambling to find the right words or structure. The stress itself kind of creates the perfect condition for more fillers.
Wow. Okay. So it really reinforces that idea that it's not just some bad habit you can just decide to stop. There are like deeper cognitive things going on and emotional ones too.
Exactly. And really getting that, understanding those layers, that's kind of the first step if you want to make some changes consciously. Because look, while fillers are normal and they do serve purposes, using too many or using them in the wrong places can definitely affect how people hear your message.
What do we know about the effect on the listener?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. A few fillers here and there, totally fine, probably unnoticeable, might even sound natural. But when they become really frequent or really obvious, they start to pull the listener's attention away from what you're actually saying. Their brain sort of registers the as, well, noise. It interrupts the smooth flow of information.
Okay.
And it basically makes them work harder to piece together your main point.
So instead of just easily following my thoughts, they're kind of tripping over these little verbal speed bumps I'm putting in.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And what's more, in situations where credibility or sounding knowledgeable matters, think about a presentation or a job interview, maybe discussing something complex.
Right.
Having a lot of fillers can subtly, maybe unconsciously, make you seem less confident or less prepared or even less knowledgeable, even if your actual ideas are really strong.
Wow. So it's a perception thing tied to how fluent you sound.
Exactly. It's not just about feeling confident, it's also about sounding it. And fillers can sometimes work against that perception.
That's a really powerful point.
And think about comprehension, too. If your speech is constantly broken up by these filled pauses or repetitive words, the rhythm is just off. The overall coherence gets muddied.
Makes sense.
It makes it harder for the listener to really grasp your ideas, connect the dots, and remember what you said later. It literally kind of dilutes the clarity of your message. So yeah, while they're natural, being mindful of them is pretty key for effective communication, especially when clarity and confidence are important.
Okay, so we get what they are now, the kind of complex reasons we use them, cognitive, social, habit, and the real impact they can have on how clear we sound and how we're perceived. So let's get practical. Based on everything we looked at, what are some actual concrete things we can do to reduce them?
Right. The first thing, and honestly maybe the most powerful, is just building awareness. You kind of have to know when you're using them and which ones are your go-tos.
Okay.
Which is why pretty much every communication guide recommends recording yourself.
Oh boy, that sounds slightly terrifying, but yeah, probably necessary.
Yeah, it can feel a bit weird at first, but it is so revealing. Just use your phone, the voice memo app, pick a simple topic, talk for a minute or two, then play it back.
And listen for.
Don't just listen to what you said. Listen specifically for the fillers, those ums, the likes, the you knows. You might genuinely be surprised how often they pop up, or you might realize, oh, I say like way more than I thought.
Right. It's like holding up a mirror to how you actually sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you've done that, you've identified your personal favorites. What's next?
Then you need strategies to replace them. And maybe the most effective replacement, even though it might feel counterintuitive, is silence.
Silence. Just pausing. But won't that feel awkward? Or won't people think I've finished talking?
That's the common fear, absolutely. Especially if you're used to filling every single tiny gap. But think about it. A short, intentional pause feels very different to the listener than an up.
How so?
A pause tends to sound thoughtful, deliberate, like you're in control. It gives you exactly the same processing time that a filler would, but it doesn't carry those potential negative perceptions. It often signals confidence, actually, not hesitation. Learning to just be comfortable with brief silences, it's honestly like a communication superpower.
Okay, embrace the pause.
Yeah.
I like that. It makes sense. What other tools do we have?
Another big one is actively working on using transitional phrases. So instead of saying, and then I went to the store, you consciously plan to use phrases that guide the listener.
You mean like next or after that or moving on?
Exactly. Or things like, in addition, however, for example, on the other hand, as a result, consequently. These words don't just fill a potential gap, they add structure. They create logical flow.
Oh, okay.
They help the listener follow your train of thought much more easily. Building up a little mental toolkit of these transition words can seriously reduce how much you lean on fillers just to connect ideas.
So it's not just about taking something out. It's about putting something functional, something helpful in its place.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Another technique, and this is especially handy if you know you'll need specific information or you often talk about the same kinds of things, is a bit of scripting or rehearsing key phrases.
Rehearsing. Doesn't that sound kind of stiff or unnatural?
It's not about scripting out entire conversations. Definitely not. It's more about preparing how you might introduce a common point or transition between topics you discuss often or structure an explanation you give frequently.
Okay. Like how?
So if you know you often hesitate when you start explaining a process, maybe practice saying something like, okay, let me walk you through the steps. Or, right, the first thing you need to consider is
Gotcha.
rehearsing just those common starting points or those typical transitions makes them more automatic, more readily available in your mind. That reduces the need to fill the space while your brain searches for how to begin. It builds fluency for those specific, predictable moments.
Ah, okay. So it's like having a few reliable opening moves ready to deploy.
Yes, exactly. It lowers the cognitive load right at those points where you might typically stumble and reach for a filler. And speaking of cognitive load, a really fundamental technique that comes up again and again is simply slowing down your speaking rate.
Ooh, that's a tough one for a lot of people, myself included sometimes.
It really is, especially when you're excited about something or feeling nervous. But speaking too quickly is a major, major driver of filler use. Your brain just has to work harder to keep pace.
Right.
So consciously making an effort to speak a little more slowly gives your brain more breathing room. More time to select the right words, structure your sentences, access those rehearsed phrases or transition words we talked about, all without that frantic pressure that makes you just blurt out
Gives your brain a chance to catch up.
Exactly. Think of it as improving the signal-to-noise ratio in your speech. More clear message, less verbal static. Now, obviously, putting these techniques into practice takes practice.
Makes sense.
And the sources we looked at had several suggestions for how to actually work this into your routine. That 30-second challenge idea is a great starting point just for building awareness and practicing control.
Remaining.
Just pick any topic, set a timer for 30 seconds, and try to speak about it without using any fillers. Record it, listen back, see how you did, then maybe try for 45 seconds, then a minute. It builds that focused attention.
That sounds like a really manageable way to start building that muscle, yeah.
Totally. And then you can move towards more interactive practice, maybe practicing with a friend or a language partner you trust, someone who can give you a gentle, non-judgmental signal, like just raising a finger whenever you use one of your main fillers.
Oh, that real-time feedback must be super helpful.
It really is. It helps you catch yourself right in the moment, which is key for changing the habit. Another great technique mentioned is shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah, where you listen to a clear speaker, maybe a recording, a podcast, an audiobook, and you try to mimic their speech exactly as you hear it, their rhythm, their intonation, their phrasing.
Okay.
It trains your ear and your mouth for smoother delivery, which naturally reduces those little gaps where fillers tend to creep in. You're basically internalizing a smoother flow.
Internalizing the flow. I like that.
Yes. And for anyone looking for more structured practice, especially if nerves are a big factor, joining something like a public speaking group, Toastmasters is a classic example, can be fantastic.
Yeah.
It gives you regular chances to speak in front of supportive people and get specific, constructive feedback on things like fluency and filler usage. It directly tackles that anxiety element, too.
It really sounds like managing fillers is partly about managing the underlying maybe anxiety or pressure that often causes them in the first place.
It absolutely is. Yeah, a lot of guides also mention the value of things like mindfulness or even just simple pre-speaking routines, like taking a few deep breaths before you start talking, maybe visualizing yourself speaking clearly, or just taking 10 seconds to mentally organize your first couple of points. Anything that calms your nervous system can help, because a calmer mind generally thinks more clearly, finds words more easily, and is less likely to rely on those stress-induced fillers.
So it's really a kind of holistic approach then. You're addressing the habit itself, the speaking techniques, and also the mindset or the emotional state behind it.
Exactly right. And like improving any skill, tracking your progress can be really, really motivating. How would you even track something like filler words without getting totally obsessed or bogged down in counting?
Yeah, you definitely don't need to count every single one. It could be simpler, like maybe once a week you record yourself speaking for just 1 minute, listen back, and count the number of fillers in that minute.
Okay.
Jot that number down, do it again the next week. Over time, you'll likely see that number start to trend downwards. That's progress.
That feels doable.
Or you could ask that trusted practice partner for their general observation. Did I seem to use like less this time? Or even just use your own feeling. How confident or smooth did you feel during that conversation? That internal sense is a really important metric too.
That's a great point. It's not just the external count, but how it feels. And I guess celebrating those little wins along the way is pretty important too. Oh, crucial. Seriously. Every time you catch yourself about to say, and you choose a pause instead, acknowledge that. Every time you consciously use a transition word, give yourself a little mental high five. Reducing habits that are often deeply ingrained takes time. It takes consistent effort. Be kind to yourself.
So how do we make sure this actually sticks?
Yeah.
It feels easy to learn these tips, but then just fall back into the old patterns when you're actually talking.
That's a really good question. Setting realistic, specific goals is probably key. Don't try to eliminate all fillers overnight. That's just setting yourself up for frustration.
Right.
Maybe your goal for this week is simply to become aware every time you say like, just notice it. That's it. Then maybe next week, your goal is to try and replace the first you catch yourself saying in any conversation with a brief pause instead.
Focus on one thing at a time.
Exactly. One type of filler or one specific technique. Consistency over trying to do everything perfectly all at once. That specificity makes it feel much more achievable.
Yeah, less overwhelming.
Definitely. And just check in with yourself regularly. Maybe once a month, reflect a little.
Yeah.
Which technique seems to be working best for you? Which filler word is still proving the most stubborn? Adjust your focus based on that. Stay curious. Keep experimenting. See what works for you in different kinds of conversations.
This has been super practical, really useful. We've really dug into what these filler words are, why they're so persistent, the cognitive side, the social side, the habit side. We've looked at how they can affect clarity and how people perceive you. And crucially, we've armed ourselves with a whole toolkit of strategies.
From embracing the power of the pause
Ready.
to using those smart transition words, slowing down a bit, and finding ways to practice consistently.
Yeah. And I think the big takeaway, really, is that reducing fillers isn't about trying to be some kind of perfect robotic speaker or stripping all the personality out of your speech.
Not at all. It's really about being more intentional. It's about boosting your own confidence by making sure your message comes across clearly, effectively, without those unnecessary little distractions.
Yeah.
Every time you choose that pause or use that transition word on purpose or take that breath to calm your nerves, that's a step towards that goal. Every little bit helps.
So, with everything we've covered today, here's something for you to think about. If you were going to focus on just one type of filler word, maybe the one you think you use the most, or if you were going to commit to trying just one of these techniques we discussed this week, what would it be? And just imagine, how might that one small step, that single focus, start to change how you feel the next time you open your mouth to speak English?
It's worth pondering. Even a small shift can really start a positive cycle over time.
Absolutely. So keep experimenting, keep practicing, and definitely celebrate your progress along the way. We really hope these insights help you communicate with even more confidence and clarity.
Yeah, good luck with it.
Join us next time for another deep dive into making your English communication even more effective and natural.